Let's go.
Welcome back to the Superman podcast. I'm joined today by my co-host Lionel. Welcome, Lionel.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for organizing this again. We've done 25 straight now. This is our 25th podcast, mind you, I think
Crazy,
it
mate.
is. Or
Crazy.
thereabouts. We're at the quarter century. I would say we're veterans now. Hopefully, everyone else on the podcast listeners enjoying the podcast so far. But Matt, before we get into this podcast, what's the experience been like with the podcast in the last 25 episodes? Well, first off, I'll say, what was your expectation coming into the podcast world?
Yep. I think listening to podcasts, you're just like, oh, that's pretty easy. Two blokes just having a yarn, just talking about it. It is totally different. The amount of preparation you have to do and uploading, editing, all that type of thing. Yeah, a lot more time and effort than I was expecting, Lionel. What about
Yes.
yourself?
Yeah, I didn't really know too much about the podcasting world as well. And then understanding the intricacies behind it all the time related to actually putting it all together and posting it out and making it look relatively reasonable to look at and also listen to, and also make sure we're getting the right content out there to a lot of the listeners out there. I didn't really know all the intricacies at all. So hats off to all those podcast legends out there that are actually doing it week in, week out. And
Yeah,
the consistency part is probably what we learnt early on as well, I'd
yeah.
imagine. Like,
Because we were aiming for once a fortnight or once a month, and
yeah.
we've been doing it once a week almost, which has been pretty good going.
Yeah, and I think our key to that as well was just designating a specific time of the week, every week, committing to it, doing it, posting it, loading it, going, pretty much. And then it becomes, I think it's after a habit, it becomes second nature
Routine,
because,
habit, yeah.
yeah, now it's just like trying to develop it out and become better at it, really. I'm trying to get better at it. Well, we've done stuff to the audio, we've done stuff to the camera, we've done stuff to like get guests on different locations and all that sort of stuff. So,
Could be getting a studio in coming months, mate.
oh, we could be upgrading our podcast experience soon and getting a studio. So, yeah, well, hopefully, people have been enjoying it. I certainly have had a wealth of feedback from a number of different people, friends, family, either other advisors or business associates, and but a
Yep.
lot of my clients as well. I've been really pleased to hear a lot of people say, "Oh, we've listened to your Superman podcast. Oh, I didn't know about that, but now thanks for explaining it in that certain way because now I do understand what you're talking about and a lot of the different details. Like even when we talked about super contributions and things like that, like one of my clients, he listened to the podcast more frequently, and then he got his wife onto it. A little shout out, Al and Donna. Hopefully you're listening. He's like, oh, I'm listening to the podcast. He goes, Donna, you need to listen to this. So then Donna comes into our meeting, and she's like, oh, I listened to your podcast. I was cleaning the house, doing all the washing and all that
How good's that?
around, and they're listening to the Superman podcast. So yeah, thanks guys for listening, and thanks for also sharing as well. Like they've been sharing the podcast experience with their friends, their family. So, but at the same time, that's what we're designed to do with this podcast is to two advisors, two blokes, two dads, two husbands, sharing our story and our information with people. So hopefully people are starting to, well, not starting to, but hopefully we're 25 episodes in now. So hopefully starting to really enjoy and we're actually getting, I think we're getting better at it as well. Like we're able to talk more
Slowly.
freely, be a bit more confident with the flashing lights and the camera on Zoom, which
Yeah.
is where we record it from. So yeah. But anyway, Matty, getting back to the chat of what Superman podcast is all about is just having a general chat about client scenarios and stories and what's
I think
going on.
this is the one we've got probably the best feedback around as well, Lionel, is
Mm,
client scenarios and experiences. So
Yeah.
some people are like, oh, I can see myself in that scenario or that experience, or you know, John down the pub. That sounds like him. Like
Yeah.
that's exactly his scenario. He's got a. We had one about the special disability trust the other week.
Yeah.
Then I've had someone go, "Oh, I've got a mate who's got a disabled son, and he's been talking to me about exactly the same stuff and doesn't know a solution." So it was perfect, one.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like it's allowing general people from general walks of life of anywhere, whether you're a professional, whether you're sitting at home and retired, or whether you're sitting at home and you sort of need something to listen to about finance, and you're trying to upskill yourself and make yourself more aware of the different commonalities with different financial areas in life, then it's easy for you to listen along to general advisors, two general gun advisors from New South Wales, one in Newcastle, one in Sydney, hear about how we do it,
Yep.
and hopefully it's helping a lot of people. So, but yeah, let's shoot to the
Did you want to
stories.
kick off with a story today, Lionel?
Yeah, I can kick off as a story. It's been like a lot of people come to us these days. They're all in their all different walks of life form and different life stages, and no stage is perfect. For example, you can have a lot of money and made a lot of money over your working career, and you've had good health and you've had no issues, and you get to the retirement era, all right? And I've heard this recently from a lot from Peter, which is the retirement coach who helps people understand retirement. He talks about the people that have got too much money and they've got not much purpose.
Mm,
Like they're lost, they're bored, they've got the social groups are either dying down, like they're dropping off because they're even going into housing, or they're obviously prematurely passing away and all that sort of
yeah,
stuff. But you get it's just a pretty important point that you can have all this money in the world and you can still be bored.
yeah,
You can still be lost in retirement, or you can have no money in the world and still live a pretty good life, like living good life with a good lifestyle. So that's probably one of the things that we look at too with retirement planning these days. That most people, when they get to the retirement place, they really it's the afterthought of thinking about retirement, and they're actually there already
mm,
at the finish line, but they haven't actually even started talking about it.
yeah,
So part of the whole process here is just trying to tell people, like, start planning and preparing a lot sooner on and thinking about your life in 5 or 10 years from now, and thinking, where am I going to be in 5 or 10 years time? And if you can sort of gauge and give yourself a bit of an idea of where you're going to be, then you can plan before that. And then when you come and see us and talk to us about those goals and aspirations, it's what Maddie talks about, is reverse engineering. What your future ideal retirement looks like at X, Y, and Z.
mm,
So, but the clients I was speaking to recently, Maddie, they're all a real estate agent from the West. He's got clients that just sold down an investment property. The guy hasn't worked for the last 4 or 5 years. His wife
yep.
hasn't worked for a number of 5 years. So I don't know. To me, what does that ring to you? What do those alarm bells ring to you?
They're obviously selling because they need income.
Yeah,
There may be a tax bill, a capital
yeah.
gains tax,
Capital
because
gains tax bill on the investment property. They've
yep,
only has
they've
it
just
for 10 years.
yep.
He's,
So it's
for
probably
example,
doubled in value. So there's a
yeah,
big
and
tax bill.
yeah. So for example, he's 67 and she's 65.
Yep.
So
So there's things around superannuation, contributions into super, downsizer, concessional contributions to reduce our tax. So
yeah,
there's all these red flags going off in my head, Lionel,
yeah. And then
about that little scenario that you've described.
so when these clients have come to me, really, he's talked about, I want to retire. Sorry, I've been prematurely retired for the last like 4 or 5 years, but I haven't had much income. I haven't been able to do much for the last 4 years because he's been partially disabled to like not
So,
being able to work in a
yeah.
specific occupation. His wife's really not really worked for a long period of time, and now they're getting to the point where they've chewed up all their cash, and they got not much cash left, and they're like, "What do we do?" The next solution is when you have an investment property, you can't sell off the back wall to go and fund the next part of your phase of retirement. Because no one's going to buy a back wall. It's not going to pay you any rent. You got to buy the whole property and liquidate the whole property. So now they've sold the property and now they need to go through and actually like realize what happens on the other side of it. Their accountant's saying, well, you've sold this property, there's going to be a big capital gains tax bill. And what a lot of people don't really understand is the differences between what actually capital gains tax is and how it actually works. So my
Talk us through it, Lionel.
common scenario with most people is if you're working, earning a 9 to 5 job, earning 100 grand, and your boss goes, "Here you go, here's 100 grand because you've been a good employee for the year. You've made $100,000 additional to your $100,000 that you've already made for the financial year. So your total year income is $200,000. Now, if we break that down, all right, for capital gains tax purposes, if we bought a property 10 years ago for $400,000 and the property's grown to $800,000 and we've sold it now for $800,000, all right, we've made a $400,000 gain, okay? Now, the $400,000 gain, if you've owned the asset for more than 12 months, you get a 50% discount on the gain. So then it's $200,000.
Geez, the government's kind, Lionel. Giving
So,
you a
but
little discount.
because husband and wife have owned the property jointly together, all right, they get to split the $200,000, and that adds to your taxable income for the financial year. Now, that's exactly what's happened for these clients. They've owned a property that's gone from 400 to 800, all right, and now they've got a $200,000 capital gain, which they've then split out, and now each individual's got $100,000 as a taxable income that they've got to add to their taxable income for the financial year of 2024 to 25. Now, the
But so
benefits,
the tax on just that alone, if they had no other income, is about 23 grand, Lionel.
23,000 each.
Each.
Yeah, so that's $46,000 over 200 grand. Now, the difference is, but Matt, if that was all in just the husband's name only, what would that be? If there was a $200,000 taxable income for the husband only owning that property, what would that be?
Yeah, you're looking at $60,000, Lionel.
Yeah, wow. So that's the differences between buying.
Additional $14,000.
So if you bought the property in the husband's name only, then you're going to pay 14 grand more at the time of selling it compared to $43,000. Now, there is other ways that we look at here in financial planning, which accountants really can't give advice on. And that's why it's really important that you work together with your accountant and your financial planner to make sure you're trying to optimize your situation, because technically one can give advice one can give advice, which is the financial planner, but one can give you the information, which is the accountant, which is under the ATO portal. So for these clients, for example, they want to retire, they want to minimize they're minimizing their tax issues, their tax being paid to the government in my head, which is what's running around. And I want to try and eliminate this as much as possible. So now for the last 4 years, neither of them work, which is ringing alarm bells in my head, because I'm like, oh, I haven't put any money in the super for the last 4 years. Now all I need to do is just check back and say, well, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, how much money do you have in super? Now, thankfully, the rules are, if your balance is less than $500,000 at the start of the financial year,
That's each person.
each individual, you can look back the last 5 financial years and check what they've put in as a concessional contribution. And if you haven't put those contributions in, then you have the ability to put it in this financial year. So now their $100,000 taxable income, we're going to be able to offset that by claiming a tax deduction on the contributions they're putting in the super. So on the contributions going into super, you're going to pay 15% tax rather than your marginal tax rate outside of super. Now, the big benefit of that is that they both have existing super funds. we can put all these contributions into Supermat, which is this concessional contribution, where we're reducing their taxable income and bringing it right down to like this tax-free threshold at the moment for this financial year, which at the moment, from memory, is around $22,580, and you pay 80 cents in tax if you squeeze it right down to that. So in theory, they're going to pay pretty much no tax outside of super. They'll pay 15% tax on the contribution going into super, which is going to be a bit over 70 grand. And then once they've done that, they're still going to have cash left over, Matty.
Yeah.
Like,
Crazy, hey?
what are we going? And the thing is, the funny thing is like, what are you actually going to go and do with all that money?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? You're going to stick it in the bank and get term deposit rates? Or do you stick it into a system that's the most tax effective environment for your retirement?
It's tax-free, right?
It's tax free.
Tax-free,
Tax
baby.
free. So we're going to chuck the rest of it into super as an after tax contribution. And their whole idea about retirement was they thought they'd only have about 300 grand in super. Now we're going to get in there like nearly close to a mil in just contributions, after tax contributions. So,
And what do you work off for them then? What type of income do you derive? Or what type of
well,
withdrawals do
at
you get?
minimum, they've
Yeah.
got to draw down at their ages 5% of the balance.
Yeah.
So let's just work off their income, the balances inside pension phase once we've gone through the whole process. They've got $1 million in super. Their
50
minimum
grand.
that they have to draw down is 50 grand a year tax free. It
It's
has to,
close to $1,000 a week, right?
yeah,
Thousand
close to
dollars a
$1,000
week.
a week. So guys living out in the West live a modest lifestyle. 50 to
Yep.
sort of $65,000 is that sort of comfortable range, modest to comfortable range. Anywhere from like 70 grand to maybe 80 grand, $85,000 is that more comfortable lifestyle and retirement range. But they've come to us with an issue that they're going to go and pay 40 grand in tax
Mm.
at the start, and they're walking away with a measly small little tax bill and a fat super fund
Yeah.
combined to
With
then go,
no with no tax bill in the future.
yeah, with no tax bill in the future. So yeah, it's and then additionally on top of that, we're actually looking at putting in in place an annuity that reduces their overall assessable assets for age pension, that pays them a fixed income for life, and then it allows them to actually receive some age pension, get a tax-free age and pension increase. Like, and they've gone from not being able to
Let's
receive any.
strip it back, Lionel, and explain what an annuity is.
I think you can do that, Matty.
All right.
You give us the
I'll take
technicality
myself.
of it.
So the concept of annuity is passing money to they call it a life insurance company, and they go and invest the money. They give you a fixed rate of return for that amount of money and an income for life for most of these concepts. Most of these annuities are income for life. Okay. So that's generally the structure of how an annuity works. You're giving away a bit like a term deposit. You're locking away money at a fixed rate, which is generating you a fixed income for a period of time, whether it's a lifetime or whether it's a fixed 10-year term. There's a whole range of different terms that you can do. But the one you're talking about, Lionel, when you go through and have a lifetime annuity, there's actual Centrelink benefits to our age pension. Whereas not the full asset that we hand over to get these types of returns and this fixed income, Lionel,
Yeah,
not the full asset will be assessed from an
yeah,
asset test perspective.
yeah. So to break it down, and the reason why we look at these annuity products is that fixed income component long term for life, and it plays like a term deposit in your life. Doesn't pay you that doesn't pay you the income at maturity, but it pays you every single month. So it's a regular income source that you can and add to the layer of income that you want for your lifestyle.
Yeah, so
Now,
you're layering the income.
yeah,
So you might have this fixed one to meet your living
yeah,
expenses, say they're 30, 40 grand a year,
mm,
bang. That, and then you might have a little bit of age pension on top. And then the fun money comes from your big
yeah.
superannuation account that you've been talking about, Lionel.
Yeah, and the reason why we talk about looking at an annuity for some, for example, is we're trying to reduce your assessable assets for age pension. Now, husband and wife, when you're eligible for the age pension at 67, the assessable assets are going to be in your own name. But once your wife reaches to age 67 as well, for at this stage, that husband's going to be 69, she's going to be 67, all of their assessable assets are going to be accessible for age pension. Now, at the moment, currently, their assessable assets were 1,050,000.
Mm.
And the assessable age assets for age pension purposes, if you have, I think it was around 1,016,000 in accessible
Before it
assets
cuts out. Yep.
before you can't receive any more age pension.
Yep.
Now, we're sort of forward planning here and saying, well, you're going to be right on the cusp of either getting some pension or no pension. If you're getting no pension, then you still got to pay rates and driver's license and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of our Aussie clients are ones that have been battlers, and they've been battling for a long period of time. They paid a lot of tax and they want to get some money back. So we're like, well, if they're like, I just want to get $1. If I get $1, I get all the benefits.
It's my entitlement, Lionel. I've paid
I'm
my
entitled
taxes
to
all
that.
my life.
I've paid tax all my life,
Yeah.
and I'm like, if that's your obligation, we can do that for sure.
Yeah.
Because the annuity, what it does, if, for example, if you put $200,000 into the annuity, you get a 40% instant asset write-off, technically what it's doing.
Yeah.
You reduce the asset by 40%. So if you're putting in 200 grand, they only assess $160,000. Is that right? About that?
That sounds good. About right.
Yeah, there. Is that right? 40% of no,
120.
120 grand. So if you
Yeah.
put in $200,000, they're only assessing 120. So
Yep.
for these clients, they're putting in an annuity and they're over the assets by what 38,
5 grand.
not even like 30
That's
odd
a
grand.
million and 45.
There's
That's
a
where it
million.
cuts out.
Oh, is
Million
that where
45.
it's
Yep.
increased to? Yeah.
Yep. September they got increased.
Oh, because before it was the March before that was 1,016,000.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So yeah.
these clients are over by 5 grand, but if we put an annuity in place, they actually drop down and they get the age pension.
Yep.
So there's two key benefits there by coming to an advisor, talking about your situation, looking at your scenario, and then giving them a number of different options and strategies to help them maximize their situation. One, they saved a shitload of money in tax.
Mm.
Two, they're being able to receive more income than they would have ever wanted to receive, both annuity, age pension, and account-based pension income.
And then the entitlements that come with the dollar of age pension, Lionel.
Yeah, and then the differences between having all their assets tied up in an investment property compared to putting all of it into a super and an account-based pension, their money is a lot more liquid. They actually sell down the funds quicker than they could when they had it in an investment property.
24 hours, they can have money in their bank account and they can be spending it. Like
Yeah,
it's
literally. So that's that quick. So that's my
great
sort of
strategy.
little
Great strategy, mate.
interesting client story with a lot of bang, bang, and bang.
Very good, mate. Very
Yeah.
good.
So I was pretty pumped about that when they come in. I went through all the different information and the scenarios, and like, and this is the thing that they're doing. Can you do that? Can you
Yeah.
do that? Can you do that? I'm like, and then I asked him, I'm like, well, are you ready to get started? And he goes like this, well, what do you think? Oh, I guess that's a yes. And
I think that's it. Like we take for granted because we've been working in it for years
yeah,
and years. I think just getting someone with the experience and the knowledge and someone that's seen people make mistakes as well. So it's just all the mistakes that people don't have to make because they're coming to us and getting the right solution the first time.
mm,
Because mistakes at retirement can set you back years and years and years. You don't have
Yeah,
time to make mistakes or find your own way or DIY or Google it.
that's that's the thing these days, is like a lot of people can go and Google all the information that they like,
It's all
but
available.
it's all available, it's all readily available. You may not find the background strategies and how to intertwine the strategies together and
Mm.
which points work with each points, because you don't really know the system that well. But you can try, like you can well and truly try. But at the
It's
same
how to
time,
execute it, right? How to
it's
execute it and in what
it's
steps.
it's the execution of allowing them to move smoothly into this next
Mm.
phase of retirement.
Yeah.
Like they've been highly strung for a long, and that's what I find with a lot of clients as well. For these people, for example, like he would be on his super fund, looking at the returns in his super fund, and the investments go up and down, up and down, up and down,
Yeah.
and all the time. And he spent more time looking at the market than what I look at the market.
Yeah.
Like I look at the market in the morning and in the afternoon to check what the macros are doing and what the markets are doing, but I'm not looking at it 3 hours a day, because it's just wasting my time.
Yeah.
Whereas he's spending more time looking at the market than I do. Now, this is what the difference is between before working with us and now working with us. Before working with us, he's looking at the markets 1 to 2 hours a day. When he starts working with us, he looks at the market 3 to 4 hours a year,
Yeah.
because they're catching up with us once or twice a year. We're having a half an hour quick phone call, and then we're readily available to have a chat as well. So
We had a client that came in, Lionel, similar. So we've just set up the plan probably 4 or 5 months in, and they're starting to stress out. So husband and wife, kind of semi-retired. They're doing a bit of casual work, Lionel, just to keep things ticking over, keep social networks, keep contributing to the community as well. Um,
yes.
husband just found out prostate cancer, so he stopped work completely.
Mm.
Bills are starting to pile up. There's some medical bills that aren't covered by private health, and then there's family over in Perth that they want to go and see for a big family event, and they're like, "We don't have all this money. Like, it's going to cost us." And they they wrote down a little budget in their notebook. It was so good, and they had all these expenses, and it came to 28 grand, Lionel. All these expenses that they had. And they said, "What are we going to do? Like, how are we going to afford this?" And then we went through the process of, we're how many months in were we? We were 8 months in, and their super fund had returned over 65 grand in that 8 months.
Well,
So they're sitting at about 12% return for 8 months. And they couldn't believe it. And they were like, "Oh, so we can spend money." I was like, "Go business class to Perth. Like, you've got no troubles at all. Like, there's more than enough money floating around. And we haven't started eating into your capital yet, because there's so much cream that we've just made in the markets over the last few months." So it was similar to your situation, Lionel, about moving across, having a plan now, investing the money, and then seeing the benefits of not just me talking about it, and you're the same. When we talk about it with a client, put the plan in place, we know what's happening. But the client, sometimes they need evidence around, well, what's actually happening. And to show them the 65 grand in their super account and illustrate, that's after all the fees, after my fees, after the investment fees, the platform fees, Lionel, that's after all the fees.
yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty good to be able to articulate and educate them around, this is the process, this is the whole plan, this is what we're trying to achieve. We never said we're going to do those returns. All our calculations were actually half of those returns, but
Yeah.
it's always good to see, and good to take advantage of, especially when people start stressing about money.
Yeah, it's always good, but you can't, yeah, most people, you can't really rely on the returns. And because there's always going to be good years, which is what they are at the
Mm,
moment, and there's going to be bad years, which may be in the next 2 months, and maybe
yep.
in the next 6 months. But at the same time, it's giving them sort of the peace of mind. You know what I mean?
Mm,
That they're worrying and stressing about their money, whether they can and can't do it. And they've got one email or one phone call to Matt, their advisor, and
mm,
says, yeah, go and do it, or transfer the money when you need it. When you need it,
Yep.
just takes their worries away straight away. It's like, what was it the other day? Oh, this morning, actually, a client of mine, she's got an investment account and also a super account. The investment account's money where she can actually go and access, and what we're pouring into super over time,
Yep.
but we're limited to how much we can put in because we've accelerated the contributions into it the last few years. She's like, "Oh, can I go and buy a new car?" I'm like, "It's your money.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
go and buy a car, new car? Go and buy a new car."
So with these clients, Lionel, I changed their mindset around. You taught me this one as well. Around they were talking about we've got this budget, and I said, you guys have got over $1 million in super and in cash and term deposits. You've got to change your mindset to a spending plan. You no longer have a budget. You now have a spending plan. Your children, they have a budget. They've got a mortgage.
Yeah,
You do not have a budget. You've got a
yeah,
spending plan. How are we going to spend this money?
yeah. And you know where I learned that was from our good mates, yeah, our mates at MDRT, the Million Dollar Roundtable. Jamie McIntyre was shout out to Jamie Mack. He actually was on the main platform at the MDRT conference in Vancouver. And to get a gig on main platform is like a pretty serious speaking role.
Do you
Like,
want to explain what Million
yeah,
Dollar
so
Roundtable is, Lionel?
MDRT is a global organization that I'm a part of. It's a premier association of financial planners around the world. There's 90,000 rough odd members, 90,000 rough odd members in 70 different countries. And every year they have a global conference, one in America and one in the Asia Pacific. So I went to the one this year in Vancouver in June. And Jamie McIntyre from Melbourne is another fellow Aussie advisor, actually had the opportunity to speak at this presentation. And part of the process that he talks about with his retiree clients is that getting away from the idea of a budget is all pretty like stale and like
Mm,
tough to talk about, and tough to be talking about with like you and your partner and stuff like that. It's sort of like budgeting is sort of like restricting you. It's like, what's the budget? We can't do much about the budget. Whereas a spending plan is like, actually, what are you going to go and spend your money on? Like, spending plan is how much money you're spending at the moment, and planning it out is planning out when you want to go and spend it.
yep.
Because most people these days, they've worked 40 or 50 years in their career, and they've worked all this year to pile up this big cash pool of money, and then they don't know what to do with it. So if you're using a budget to go and spend all this money, it's like, no, it's not the right mindset and the my like what methodology and the right mindset to go and talk to people
Yeah.
about. So we talk about using the adoption of our friends at MDRT, which helps us learn and grow and become better as advisors to go
To
and
help our clients, right?
help our clients. That's the ultimate thing, is to become better advisors, better people, better father, better family man. So, yeah, when we go away to these conferences, we spend money on ourselves to develop ourselves to become better people. So,
And it's just different strategies and ways to articulate things as well.
yeah,
Like it's the same underlying strategy and plan.
same
It's,
message, same
it's just
thing.
giving us the tools to articulate it a little better.
It's giving you a different mindset as well to think about
Yeah.
money differently. So, well, it's nice to hear that you're adopting that, Matty. It's good to
Welcome,
hear.
mate.
No, well,
Thank you.
that's good. Well, yeah, man. Well, there's
Do we have any others? Do we want to do one more quick one? We'll
I don't
wrap it
really
up
have
there.
anything else that I can think of at the moment, but
I've been seeing lots now with properties, investment properties,
yeah,
Australians, and just like you spoke about with your retiree client,
yeah,
talking about his investment property that they got to retirement and worked out we've got no income, we've got to
mm,
sell it. So I'm working with some 40-year-olds that
yeah,
have paid
okay,
off their house.
that's
They've got
nice.
an opportunity because one of their parents is downsizing and moving over to Asia, so they could buy the family home as well. Um, so it's just reverse engineering it. I always go in thinking about how do we get out of all these different properties with the least amount of tax. So I'm thinking about tax and the exit strategy. Why most of the clients coming in are saying, "I just want a property. Give me a property," and I'm like, which entity is going to suit best? What tax structure is going to suit best? How are we getting out? Are we going to be living in it? Because that's going to affect our debt structure. Like, are we putting in a 20% deposit? Are we putting the rest of the money in the offset account while it's our principal place? Is it
Yeah.
flipping to an investment property in the future? So I've probably got 4 or 5 of those in the last 2 weeks, Lionel, just talking about property.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
one of the first questions all of them ask is, as financial planners, how do you guys charge fees? And do you work on strategies, or are you just trying to sell me product? Which is disappointing to still hear that it's still in the industry, that financial advisors are out there saying, no, 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 don't buy property, get into these shares, managed funds, these model portfolios, and I'll charge you 1 or 2% on that. I just
Yeah.
think it's crazy. It's a bit of conflicted remuneration as well. Being, if we're charging fee for service, it shouldn't be a percentage. It should be a fee for service so we can get them the best possible strategy, minimize their tax, and get the best investment.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Like it's a lot of people these days, unfortunately, there's a lot of different operators that do things differently. So,
Mm,
but in saying that, some of those advisors aren't really, they're like so tunnel vision with the way that
yeah.
they do things. They don't look outside what's out there on the
Yeah.
horizon, all the different options available. It's like, don't limit yourself to one little thing because you're going to get stuck in the one lane and the same people are going to come to you and same people are going to get upset because you're doing the same shit. Whereas if us is like, well, what are the options out there? We can go
Yeah.
here, or we can go here, or we can go over here. And if we look at 1, 2, 3, these are the different options for you to go and invest money. You choose which way to go and do it. I'm going to help educate you on what you're going to go and do
Yeah.
to help you make the best decision. I'm not going to force you down it because that's not what we do. We educate our clients first and then we give them
Mm,
guidance on which was the most probably appropriate way to go and do it.
yeah.
Whether it's investment properties, you're going to look at having good, solid income, good cash flow. If you don't have good cash flow, then it's going to be really hard to do a property. So, but if you've got leftover money and stuff like that, how do you go and invest it? These are our ways and avenues to go and help you make better decisions.
Putting all the pieces to the puzzle together. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Very good,
yeah,
Lionel.
Matty. Well,
I think we wrap it up there.
good you got your grateful jumper on today.
Grateful, mate.
Grateful. Hey.
Grateful.
Well, yeah, I think we wrap it up there today. Hopefully everyone's enjoying the Superman podcast. If you are listening to it and you're enjoying it, make sure you give us a shout out when you do listen to it. Shout it out by just either tagging us in a post, or if you wherever you're listening to, you should just take a picture and say, I'm listening to the Superman podcast, shout us out and just say, give us a bit of a shout out. So, but if anyone's interested in coming on the show and you're available on a Wednesday afternoon around 2:30, then drop us an email. My email is lionel@purposeplanning.com.au.
And you can reach me at info@newcastleadvisor.com.
And if you are interested and you want to jump on for a session, for a Zoom session, and you've got something interesting to talk about, or even if you're not interested, don't have much interesting things to talk about, but you've learned something about your finances and how it's changed your mindset about what you've done with your finances, I'd be keen to hear the story. We do have a couple of guests coming up soon. Mr. TPD Claimer, Matty.
Yep.
Matty is called Mr. TPD Claim because he's
After 20 years in financial planning, I had 0 TPD claims, and then I've had 5 or 6 in the last 6 months. So, yeah,
so he's
it's
become
been
Mr.
crazy.
TPD Claims. So yeah, there's a couple of those coming up, a few interesting stories. So make sure you keep out for those. But until then, Matty, hopefully enjoy the rest of your week, mate.
Thank you, mate.
No worries. Well, thanks, listeners, for listening in. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.